Hello and welcome, Mr. Pass, to our final project presentation in global economy. My name is Alexander Kopius, and Simon Ranges and Austin Dennis are my members for this rating agencies presentation. So, this is our outline. I will begin with the definition and then I will tell you something about the function. Then the big three, the role of the big three in financial crisis, how Dodd-Frank reforms have affected their functioning, the launching of the EU rating agency, and then the question, are future reforms necessary? So firstly, what is a rating agency? This is a simple definition for that. A credit rating agency is a private company that looks at the creditworthiness of a large-scale borrower, such as a company or country. It effectively ranks the borrower on their ability to pay off their loan. So, rating agencies are organizations specialized in assessing the credit risk of both public and private sector companies that use capital markets for financing. The ratings provide a measurement of these companies' solvency and of the likelihood that they will not be able to pay their financial obligations. The rating also serves as a benchmark for investors to make decisions, as they allow them to see the risk associated with their decisions and therefore the amount of payment they can demand. Although the decision to seek a rating is normally made by the company or the institution issuing the product, at least or two ratings from the main agencies are needed in order to obtain financing, for example by issuing debt or receiving financing by discounting assets in central banks. So these main agencies are Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch. All three belong to the US and Canadian group DBRS. When giving their rating, the agencies use data from the countries, organizations requesting their service and analyze their fundamentals and behavior if certain situations of stress were to occur. Each rating agency uses its own methodology when assigning a rating. The ratings are scored using alphabetic codes based on a limited scale that is stable over time. So on the left side you can see these ratings from Moody's, Fitch and Standard & Poor. So although the rating agencies are not completely the same, they are close enough to allow users to determine the credit rating of an issuer or a product immediately. The rating AAA is the highest rating and implies a negligible risk of default. There are also two major groups of ratings, investment grade and speculative grade. Ratings below BBB are considered to be speculative grade and have a high risk of default. The rating agency's decisions have a huge impact. For example, losing investment grade status can make financing much more expensive for a company or country and could even prevent them from obtaining financing.
Okay, now we'll talk about the big three. The big three are the three biggest rating agencies. These include Moody's Investor Service, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch Ratings. The first credit rating agency was Moody's Investors Service. It was founded in 1909 to give investors credit information on railroad bonds, and they did mostly government bonds and stuff, and eventually branched out in 1970 to become basically what we know them as now. Fitch Ratings was the smallest, or is the smallest of the big three now. Founded in 1913, they created the first system for rating debt instruments, which really set the precedent for what is used today. So the rating systems that you'll see in this presentation are similar to what was first created by Fitch Ratings, even though now they don't hold as big of a market share as they used to. And then the final of the big three is Standard & Poor's. And Standard & Poor's was created in 1941 when two companies merged. They're the largest of the big three today. They provide credit ratings as well as investment research. Or so they branched out a little bit from purely credit ratings, and that's kind of the standard nowadays. So the big three built a lot of rapport among investors, and they had high confidence in them because nothing had really gone wrong until the financial crisis. Even though there were some scandals, it didn't really knock the confidence of, or not necessarily the confidence, but people would still use the big three uh, rating agencies because of the legal weight that they held, and as well as there weren't very many other ratings agencies that were providing competition. They're also convenient because they have a well-known system of rating, so it requires less research as an investor to understand the rating. You don't have to compare it against something you already know. Investors are already familiar with the rating systems of all three. And so they were criticized and vilified due to the oversight and their response leading to and after the financial crisis. They are seen by many as one of the main reasons for the financial crisis. So here's some problems with the big three. One of the biggest complaints is the oligopolistic nature due to their large market share and barrier to entry of the market. The ratings from the big three hold more legal weight than other rating agencies outside. So they're really more powerful, they're more useful to investors, and there are some government certification that they have that a lot of smaller rating agencies don't have, and that's what makes them hold more legal weight. So it's a hard market to get into, and the big three hold 95% of it. Another problem is that they're paid by the issuers whose securities they rate, which is a bit of a conflict of interest because they could be pressured into giving higher ratings because the people who are paying the bills are the people that they're rating.
So I explain now to you the role of the Big Three in the financial crisis 2008. At first, you have to understand the business practice to this time to understand the deeper going problem which is behind the financial crisis 2008. So, the society at this time regenerated from the dot-com bubble crash, and there was the big American dream to own a house. Mainly for two reasons. The first one is that the people want to live by themselves inside the house, and the second one is that they want to use it as an investment opportunity. But the main problem is most Americans didn't have the rating to get a house credit. On the other side, you had the banks and financial institutes. They also regenerated from the dot-com bubble crash and were searching for new business opportunity. So that lets them in a way that they were also willing to give credits to people which normally don't have the credit. In the second step, the financial institutes transform these into financial products. But normally it could be hard to transform one credit into a financial product because nobody is willing to buy these products. So the banks didn't use just one product, just one credit to transform it into a financial product. They used thousands and hundred thousands. And to be honest, what's behind these financial products? Behind these financial products, there are mortgage-backed credits with a high fallout risk. And now they try to make these things tradable. So these financial products were divided into several bonds and stocks and were able to trade all over the world on all financial marketplaces. But may you think now, where's the role of the rating agencies? That I will explain to you in the following. So you have now these financial products which I mentioned before, and behind these financial products are full debts which with high fallout risks, which normally nobody is willing to buy. So that gave them also the name junk loans. But the financial institutes found a solution that someone is willing to buy these products. So they gave money to rating agencies, and the rating agencies had before the financial crisis, a good recommendation all over the world, a good reputation all over the world. And these rating agencies gave these financial products best ratings so that they are safe, that there are no fallout risks, and that there are good retirement plans. And with these high ratings, mostly AAA, the financial products went to financial markets all over the world. And investors all over the world bought these financial products as retirement plans, speculative goods, and stuff like that. Also, a lot of banks in Germany sold these products before the financial crisis 2008, and a lot of people lost their money. So, but now there's the question, when this system of financial products failed. So, as we discussed before, these financial products had really high fallout risks, and they were based on mortgage-backed real estate credits. So, and as I also mentioned before, a lot of clients normally didn't hit a credit rating to get a real estate credit. And in the time of 2007, 2008, there was a little rise of the interest rate, short-term interest rate, which caused the problem that a few clients were not able anymore to pay for their credits. So that leads to the first step. So the client loses the ability to pay the annuity. In the next step, the bank cancelled the real estate credit and gets the mortgage-backed security and tries to sell it to get the money from the credit back. But now there was a big problem also. So in this time, the people bought with a really high leverage. So they had nearly no equity, so that they get nearly the full house price financed by the bank. And now in a normal market situation, if the client is not anymore able to pay the credit back, the bank can sell the property and get from this the money back for the credit. But if that happens thousands and hundred thousands and millions of times, there is a huge oversupply of real estate on the market, and the prices drop down. And when the prices drop down, you can't sell the house anymore for the price where the client bought it for. So when the bank is using the house for paying the credit, it's not working anymore because the house is less worth than the client paid for, and then the client financed it. But now maybe some people say, yeah, okay, but what's the problem for the economy in general? It looks like just a housing crisis. So, as I mentioned before, the rating agencies had a huge role in the system, and there was lack of trust in the rating agencies because the people came in contact with the fact that the ratings of the rating agencies were not objective, because they rated also the financial products of the mortgage-backed securities before, and they also dropped down. And now there was the huge lack of trust in the ratings of the rating agencies. But rating agencies didn't just rate financial products like mortgage-backed security financial products. They also rated like bonds, stocks, and also national governments. And so they rated nearly everything in the financial system. And now the investors came in contact with the fact that, these ratings were not based on objective informations. There was a huge loss of trust in these ratings, and that leads to a massive price drop down in nearly all asset class, like, as I mentioned, real estate, also stocks, bonds, and company shares and stuff like that. And that lack of trust in the financial markets leads to a lack of money for producing companies. So they were not anymore able to get equity on financial markets, and also not able anymore to get debt on the financial markets. And huge companies have a problem when they are not able to get fresh money anymore, and that leads to the case that you had massive job losses, so they had to fire people to reduce their costs. And that also leads to massive demand problems. And this general economic crisis leads to the European debt crisis, because a lot of South European countries had also bad financial situations before, but as the crisis kicked in, they had to fight against job loss and high cost for their social systems, and that make some South European countries bankruptcy. So they were not able anymore to pay for their debts. And there was again a role of the rating agencies, because all these states had perfect ratings like AAA for their bonds to get fresh money on the market. And now also came clear that the rating agencies didn't make objective work. So it became obvious that like Italy and Spain and Portugal didn't have a good credit rating, also when the credit rating agencies mentioned it before. So there was in general a huge lack of trust.
Okay, so next we'll talk about the Dodd-Frank Act. The Dodd-Frank Act was passed in 2010, obviously as a response to the financial crisis, which credit rating agencies played a large part in. The Dodd-Frank Act was the most significant piece of financial legislation for almost 80 years, as you can see, 1933. This is significant because it shed some light on how little the U.S. government was paying attention to these falsely inflated credit ratings that led to the global financial crisis. The Dodd-Frank Act was created to improve the quality of credit ratings as well as to protect investors. So the way that they did this was to make credit rating agencies liable for faulty ratings and adding more regulation to the creation of credit ratings. This increased transparency that they added to credit ratings, both in the creation of credit ratings, sort of the methodology, how credit ratings were assigned, as well as how credit ratings performed. This wasn't really too helpful in the end, as we'll see on the next slide. I'll get more about that later. So the Dodd-Frank Act switched from requiring credit ratings to be used for investment to basically insisting that firms can't rely on credit ratings and that they shouldn't trust credit ratings. This was a pretty significant switch and was also heavily criticized. On to the next slide here. Here's some pretty major criticisms of Dodd-Frank. So one of the main facets of the Dodd-Frank Act was to protect investors and change how they view credit ratings and make them trust them less. And that really didn't work. The legal changes to credit ratings after the Dodd-Frank Act didn't really work either. The big three were able to basically jump through hoops to meet the new regulations without really changing the effectiveness of their ratings. The Dodd-Frank Act was also supposed to help remove some barriers to entry to break down the oligopoly. And the way that they did this was by not requiring the credit ratings for investments, but there are still other legal ramifications of not using one of the big three. So this was really ineffective, and people didn't start using smaller credit rating agencies just because like one small thing of the regulation changed. So the market still is not competitive. Another criticism is that it focused too much on the process rather than results. Like I was talking about earlier, how the agencies would jump through hoops instead of actually improving their ratings. This also kind of hinders innovation, and new credit rating agencies that are joining the market really have to follow the rules of basically how the big three have been doing things. And so it's a whole bunch of effort to enter the market, and they can't really provide any differentiating service. So it's really not feasible to enter the market. And as I said earlier, 95% of the market is held by the big three. So in the Harvard Business Review of the Dodd-Frank Act, they said that credit ratings are lower, less accurate, and less informative to the market following the passage of Dodd-Frank. This is a pretty commonly held belief in all of the reading that I've done. It seems to be pretty much the consensus that the Dodd-Frank either didn't help at all or made things worse.
Launching of EU rating agency, or I would better say, was there really a launch of EU rating agency? We will see. So, in the first half of 2011, European commissioners and politicians called for the establishment of a European rating agency to break up the opinion oligopoly of the US rating agencies Moody's, Standard & Poor's and Fitch Ratings. Among others, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble also advocated the establishment of a European rating agency. In this context, the company developed the model of a European rating agency and presented it to the EU Commission, the banking supervisory authorities and the governments of the EU countries in July 2011. The greatest difference between the planned European rating agency and its US counterparts was its organizational form. According to this, the European variant should be a foundation independent of the state. Roland Berger strategy consultants predicted 300 million euros for the establishment of the agency, to be provided by a consortium of investors with 25 members. The rating agency was initially scheduled to start developing country ratings in mid-2012. Additional bank and corporate ratings were to be developed in the following years. In contrast to Moody's, Standard & Poor's and Fitch, the European Rating Agency should not be profit-driven. It was planned to make all data relevant to a rating available on the internet, thus making the rating processes, which had previously been intransparent in some cases, transparent. An economic advisory board should monitor the work of the new rating agency. In January 2012, the Roland Berger Company announced that the European Rating Agency would possibly issue its first own ratings from the beginning of 2013. The rating agency was to be established as a non-profit private foundation based in the Netherlands by the end of the first quarter of 2012. After the foundation of the European Rating Agency threatened to fail in spring, Roland Berger strategy consultants announced in April that the agency was about to be founded and that enough investors had been found. The founding head of the European Rating Agency would be Dr. Markus Krall, who would step down as senior partner at Roland Berger. So, on April 29, 2013, it was announced that the plan had failed, because it was not possible to attract enough private foundation capital to get the amount of 300 million euros. So there was no launch of EU rating agency.
Now there's the question if future reforms are necessary. In my opinion, there are mainly three problems. The first one is the high power concentration in the hand of just a few rating companies. So the problem is there's no real competition. It's something like an oligopoly, and they make their own prices, and no real market competition, and that's never good for a market. So I think there have to be more competitors to make the market more efficient. The second one is the clash of conflicts. So the rating agencies get paid from financial institutes to rate their financial products. And you see, they can't work independent because they are highly dependent on the money which they get from the financial institutes. And so this is some kind of a conflict. Normally they have to get paid from the people which are buying the products, so that they have the chance to give a more objective view on these financial products. And the third one is that there's no possibility for control, no governmental and no national control. So also when there are bad side effects which came from new ratings to the whole economy, there is no way to interrupt and change these ratings from a national and governmental side. And it's also not good that there's so much power in their hand.